Hello guys, welcome again to Forex SPV, and it's another weekend, and today we are going to look on what happened on last week on this market. That is from 2nd of November to 6th, and I'll look on a few pairs. We'll start with EurOUSD. This is a quick recap. So on Friday, going Wednesday is where the dealer was forming a peak formation low on this pair. So we have several hits around this trap zone, and this area also has the half point as the quarters here. And as you can see here, we had equal lows, and then the dealer came on grab liquidity, and this happened overnight during the US presidential election, and there is where EurOUSD did set the peak formation low, and later on we had a good uptrend. Now let us go to the 15 minutes time frame and look on a few entries that they presented themselves. So we had a peak entry on Wednesday, so we had a clear W around the blue tracer, and there is where we have our entry. And then we had an ID50 trade here, and around Asian range we had blueberry trade. This bounce around the blueberry, but this wasn't an entry to take because of the timing, because of the Asian range. And on Thursday we had a 50-50 bounce trade here for a buy. So all these trades are offered at least 75 pips. You can see here we had 25, 25, 25. So this is 75 pips. And from this point here, we had 25, 25, 25. So this is 75 pips. So along these quarters, we have this range as a 25 range. So it's very easy for you to know the profit targets when you have a template like this, when you have the quarters installed. And on Friday we had the NFP, but the dollar was still weak, and also we had a 50-50 bounce trade here. There was a hesitation zone where the dealer did break it and came for a retest, so we had another entry here. But these are the entries that are not easy to grab. So these are the entries that it's not easy to grab. And USD Chef as this dollar XX pair will be having a downtrend. So we had head and shoulder pattern. Head and shoulder pattern along the hour and time frame as a peak formation high. And this is the intermediate term high. And on Tuesday here is where the dealer formed the high of the week. On Monday late. And on Tuesday, I think we had a 50, this was an ID50 here. Yes, we had an ID50 on Tuesday, I remember. And on Wednesday is where we had the US presidential election. Now let us go to the 15 minutes time frame and have a look on a few entries. Here we had the peak formation, and here we had this was not a clear ID50, so it was a straightaway trade, not easy to take. And on Wednesday we had our stop and high towards the blue tracer, and then we had a downtrend there. So it was not easy also to trade this kind of market since the volatility was high and all that. But on Thursday, we had this 50-50 bounce trade as a downtrend, as a sell, and the same happened to EurOUSD as an uptrend, as a buy. And the same, this was the only feasible entry around this week on USD Swiss franc. And coming to pound USD, we also had a peak formation low. The dealer started setting the peak on Friday. I mean, on Thursday is where he applied the brakes, and then on Tuesday is where it started moving. So this was a peak formation low, and when we come and look for entries, here on Monday we had an entry. This was a V pattern along the stop and box. But the stop loss for this pattern was extremely high. So it was a high risk trade. Although this is a small quarter point here where the dealer did break it and then came for a retest. But this entry was not feasible since the timing wasn't right. So it's very late New York. It's not right for me. And on the next Tuesday, we had a straightaway trade. Started with a 50-50 bounce right before London gap time, and we had a straightaway buy. And this on Wednesday, we had the stop hunt, a 200 pip stop hunt during US presidential election. And price came to bounce around this EMA. This is 3,200 EMA, and see these several bounces, and it formed a very good W here before the Bank of England interest rate. So we had BOE interest rate on Thursday, so we had a buy here. So the market makers followed the trend, and then we had an uptrend. And here is where an entry presented itself. If you look at it, we had an entry here. Here's where the entry presented itself. So we had two high risk trades, although this wasn't that high risk. See, the stop loss is around 30 pips, but the one we had on Monday was a high risk trade. And when you go to USDJPY, this is the daily time frame. You see a clear pin to the 50 EMA, which will be pinned to the blueberry along the 1 time frame, and we have a large quarter point here. So this is where the dealer from the peak reset. So you can see this was a peak formation low, and we only had 2 levels, and this was a peak reset here. And this happened during the US presidential election. So we had a clear peak formation high, and then we had a downtrend going to the end of the week. And we had several entries, like a retest around the large quarter point. You can see we had a clear M pattern here, and then we had a downtrend. And if you go the next day, we had a 50-50 bounce trade. See, all dollar pairs offered this 50-50 bounce trade, so either downtrend or uptrend. So that's dollar disparity. And you would understand that if you clearly understand fractional disparity. And we had EurAud. EurAud offered a very good peak formation low around the half point here. See several stop hunts around the strap zone here. And this this peak formation low had the first targets towards this large quarter point here, the price of 1.55000. So it offered several entries for a buy trades. We had an entry, this was Tuesday, where the dealer applied the brakes. And then on Wednesday came again to the blue tracer, and this is where we take our peak entry. And on the next day, we had an ID50 trade here. See this W pattern around the 50 EMA, a very clear ID50 trade. and that was a very beautiful zero drawdown trade. Although on Wednesday also we had an entry here as a buy, and it offered clear 50 pips, and then returned back. See, this entry was around this Asian high, so this was 50 pips, and then we saw an M pattern to return to the peak formation low. And this area was along the, this is the 25 pips from the large quarter point. So this is the undershoot area here. And when price bounces around the undershoot area, we should expect to return maybe to the station zone or the half point here. So it returned back to the half point where it started its journey, and then we had price coming to the large quarter point again. So we had a zero drawdown trade along Thursday and Wednesday. So those were the clear entries to take. EurAud. USD card had a very good peak formation high, and on Monday we had a very good entry. Had a very good sell on Wednesday also. So let us look on Monday. We had an entry here. So if you look at it, see, we had a bearish order block here, and price moved away from it, and then it came for a retest, and here we also had the blue tracer. So this was also a break and a retest around the natural support, and we had a name here forming. I remember I drew a large quarter, another block here. Yes, I remember I drew another block here. So this was a retest on the other block, and here's where USD card presented an entry for a sell, and we had a 50-50 bounce on the next day. You can see a clear M was formed around the 50 M. We had a very good downtrend, and card was very strong during these 2 days, and dollar was also weak. And on Wednesday, we had a stop hunt, but it ended up with price returning back to its original, to the true trend. And on Thursday, we had this 50-50 bounce trade around this area, just like other dollar pairs. Now let us have a look on USD also. Last week I had analysis on USD. So this peak formation high, and this was also a peak reset, since we had a peak formation low here. So I anticipated for this peak reset, and on Monday, I remember I took an entry on USD. So this was Thursday, Friday, and on Monday we had a clear M pattern here. So we had 15-200 crossover, 200 and 800 crossover, and we had a clear M pattern along the blueberry, and the 200 EMA was here, and this was also a stop and high. So we had a clear M pattern there, and then priced. So we had an entry here, and I sent a signal on this also. And then on Tuesday also we had a clear M pattern around the 50 EMA. So that was this is like a type 2 London pattern. And then we had an entry there. So this trade matured on the next day. So since USD is also made up of the dollar, so the next day we also had this, and I remember my target was 16.00. Okay, this is 16.0. So my target was around this point here. This was my target TP for this downtrend, but then price returned back to the peak. Settled this line around the peak. And then on the next day, we had a downtrend going to Friday, going to Thursday and Friday. But it did not take any entry on Thursday or Friday. But we had a clear M here. But this was like a V. Although this is a quick M. But for this kind of pattern, the entry was clearly at this point. After this engulfing candle was closed. If other person's patient, so you would wait for this pullback for you to have a lower risk entry. So that's what we had on USDR. Yens also presented peak formation low. So we had CHF JPY, Euro JPY as peak formation low. And if you look at it, they did apply the brakes on Friday here. That's why you see a consolidation. And Tuesday is where the dealer had a rise. So we had a blue tracer. We had the hesitation zone at this point. That's where they did apply the brakes. And on the next day, we had this pattern here. If you look at it, we had this pin during Asian, and we had this pin during New York time. So this was at a fat W. So we had an entry there. And also on the next day, we had this top and low. So very sharp move going to the low, and then we had a V, so this was also another entry. And this was another zero drawdown trade. And CHF JPY, we had so I remember on CHF JPY we had an entry at this point as a buy. So we had an entry at this point as a buy, but then we had a stop and flow as a 3 swipes to the low. So the stop loss was hit, and then we had to re-enter after this pattern was formed. So this was a late entry. And on the next day, we had a low test pattern. Look at how the dealer pinned this blue tracer. So we had a low test pattern, and then our entry was there. And then we had a very good uptrend. So CHF JPY, Euro JPY were very good trades this week. NZD card had a very good peak reset around the blueberry, if you look at it. And of course, on Wednesday evening is where grab an entry. If you look at it, on Tuesday we had an entry. Like we had the first leg to the blue tracer and the second leg to the blue tracer. So we had an entry there for a buy. And on the next day, also the dealer came back to the trap zone and gave us, this is like a head and shoulder pattern. So he gave us this, and then on the next day, he rose by bouncing around the blueberry and the 200 EMA along the mile. So we had, we also had an entry here. So for any market maker trader, this is a very clear entry there. And then we had an uptrend, very good uptrend towards Friday, where price formed an M around the half point there. So this was an alert to you that you should get out of this trade. And if you look at it, this Asian range had 74 pips range, so it was a very good trade to take. And we have also had head and shoulder pattern on this is gold. We had a head and shoulder pattern, and we had an uptrend on gold. And since the dollar was weak after Wednesday during the U.S. presidential election start, so the dollar became weak. So we expected gold to rise and not go to the 15-minute chart. So next week now you should look for buy trades on this, and your target should be this area here. It should be your target. So we have our first shoulder, our head. So you should expect for a second shoulder at this point. If you draw the Fibonacci here, the shoulder should have come to the equilibrium point here. So it's around that area. So you should look for buy trades on this. And for AudUsd index is showing that it's weak. Showing signs of weakness, so EurAud should be for a buy trade. The AudUsd for a sell. Although we also have the dollar on AudUsd, so for AudUsd you should target this half point here. So it's on the overshoot area. So your target should be on this half point as a buy. NzdUsd, you should sell to this half point. And the same to NzdUsd, you should sell to this small quarter point here. That is where the mile is also available. So the same position as the mile is the small quarter point. So they have like 75 pips going down. Should also look for sells on that. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a happy trading week. For next week, you should remember to check on what fundamentals we have for next week. And I had a quick look and I see we have a New Zealand dollar interest rate statement, I think. RNBZ rate statement. So you should be aware of the fundamentals coming for the next week, so that you can plan your trading schedule. So thank you again, and this is where I end for today.